Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are really immersing ourselves in something quite monumental. It's an extensive culinary blueprint, dedicated entirely to the architecture of just one dessert, the cheesecake.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible when you lay it all out.
We're looking at a stack of sources here that provides just, well, systematic, really detailed instructions for 50 distinct variations.
50.
Yeah, 50. From the super simple mix and bake ones to, the most structurally complex regional specialties out there.
It really is an incredible body of work, isn't it? 50 ways to try and achieve cream cheese perfection, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And each one has these subtle, sometimes not so subtle, but critical differences.
In technique.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Technique, the dairy composition, what kind of cheese or cream they're using, and crucially, the cooling methodology, how they handle it after baking.
Okay.
So our mission today really is to filter this huge library of knowledge for you, the listener. We want to find the common threads, the functional purpose behind some of the, frankly, bizarre ingredients we see sometimes.
And the shortcuts.
And the shortcuts, yeah. The shortcuts to kind of understanding the whole spectrum of cheesecake creation. We're aiming to translate all this volume into, well, actionable insight.
Okay, brilliant. Let's unpack this then. Where do we start? The absolute foundation seems logical.
Right. The minimalist approach.
Exactly. The source material kicks off with two recipes that are, well, they look almost identical on paper. Recipe 1, the 3-step blueberry cheesecake, and recipe 2, just the basic 3-step cheesecake.
They really do define the structural baseline for this whole collection, don't they?
Seems like it.
If you want the blueprint for just speed and simplicity, this is definitely it. The core filling is minimal. 2 8-ounce packs of cream cheese,
Standard.
half a cup of sugar, a little vanilla, and just 2 whole eggs. That's it.
That ratio seems important. 16 ounces of cream cheese, only 2 eggs.
It's crucial. What it means is you're building a dense cake. The eggs here are acting mostly as a binder, to set the cream cheese. They're not really there to aerate it, to make it light and fluffy like a souffle.
Okay, so dense and straightforward. And the simplicity carries through in how you actually make them too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Take the blueberry version. The flavor integration is, well, it's purely visual and happens right at the end.
How so?
You pour the basic cream cheese mix onto the graham cracker crust, right? Then you just dollop about a quarter of some blueberry pie filling on top.
Just plop it on.
Yeah, and then grab a skewer or a knife and just swirl it through the mixture. It takes literally seconds, but you get that really appealing marbled look.
Minimum effort, maximum visual appeal. I like it.
It's the definition of efficiency in baking, really. Now, contrast that just slightly with the plain 3-step version.
Okay.
It uses the exact same base, the same cream cheese, sugar, eggs, vanilla. But the flavor integration comes from texture. Miniature semi-sweet chocolate chips.
Okay. Fold it in.
Exactly. Half a cup is gently folded into the mixture. You want to get them dispersed evenly, not all clumped together. And then, for good measure, you sprinkle another quarter cup on top before it goes in the oven.
And the baking is standard for both.
Pretty much identical.
Yeah.
Standard 40 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. The key instruction, as always with cheesecake, is watching it until the center barely jiggles. Not liquidy, but not rock solid either.
Right.
These two really set the standard for that solid, dense, traditional American-style cheesecake.
Okay, so those are the foundational baked structures. Simple, dense. But what if your main goal is speed, like true velocity?
Now we move into the, let's call them quick set and no-bake methods. And we absolutely have to start with the champion of potentially misleading titles.
Let me guess. The 8-minute cheesecake. Recipe 4.
You got it. Recipe 4. It's a fantastic example of, let's say, culinary marketing.
Because it's not really 8 minutes start to finish, is it?
Not even close. The sources are clear. The active blending time, combining the softened cream cheese, sugar, sour cream, vanilla, and the really critical ingredient here.
Which is?
A full 8-ounce can or tub of Bird's Eye Cool Whip, whipped topping.
Okay.
That mixing part might only take 8 minutes if you're quick. But here's the catch, the big asterisk.
The chilling time.
Precisely. The structural integrity, what holds it all together, relies entirely on cold setting, not baking.
And the instructions say, 4 hours at the very least for chilling?
Exactly. Minimum 4 hours. So you're trading that 40 minutes in the oven for 4 hours, or probably more like overnight in the fridge.
So why the Cool Whip? Why is that essential here?
It's the stabilizer. Cool Whip isn't just whipped cream. It contains emulsifiers and other stabilizers. Those are the things that ensure the cream cheese mixture sets up firm, but also light, without needing heat to denature proteins and make them bind.
Ah, clever. Chemical setting instead of thermal setting.
You could put it that way, yeah. And the sour cream is important too. It adds that necessary tanginess, that creamy mouthfeel that you might otherwise miss in a no-bake recipe that relies so heavily on a pre-made whipped topping. It balances the sweetness.
That's a great insight. Replacing heat with chemistry and specific ingredients. Okay, so that's one type of quick. What about the true no-bake structures, the ones using gelatin?
Right, there are three distinct strategies here in the sources, and they all use gelatin, but in really fascinatingly different ways. It's not just add gelatin.
How do they differ?
Well, we can kind of group them based on their main goal. Is it structure plus flavor from the gelatin, or is it structure just for, let's say, purity of the main flavor?
Okay, example of the first type.
Recipe 48, the classic no-bake cheesecake.
Yeah.
This one goes for structure and flavor by using 3 ounces of lemon-flavored gelatin. Jello, basically.
Not Jell-O, okay.
You dissolve that in boiling water, standard Jello procedure. Then you fold it into the cream cheese base, cream cheese, sugar, vanilla, and then you combine that mixture with whipped cream.
So the gelatin is doing double duty.
Exactly. It binds the whole thing together so it sets firm in the fridge, but it also completely dominates the flavor profile. You get a bright, distinctly lemony, maybe slightly synthetic taste from the Jello itself.
Right, okay. So a very assertive flavor profile driven by the binder. How does that compare to, say, recipe 76, the creamy chilled cheesecake?
That one seems to aim more for flavor purity. It wants the cream cheese and any subtle flavorings to be the star, so it uses unflavored granulated gelatin, Knox gelatin, typically.
Unflavored. How does the method change?
It's a bit different. First, you have to dissolve, or bloom, the unflavored gelatin in cold water. Let it sit for a few minutes.
Okay.
Then you gently heat that mixture, stirring constantly, just until the gelatin is completely dissolved and the liquid is clear. No boiling. You just want it smooth.
Got it.
That resulting clear binder is then mixed into the main filling, milk, sugar, lemon juice, fresh this time usually, and whipping cream. The gelatin provides invisible structure. It sets the cake, but you taste the fresh lemon, the tangy cream cheese, not the binder itself.
And that's why it's often served with something like fresh strawberries to complement that cleaner profile.
Precisely. It underscores that cleaner, less artificial flavor profile.
Okay, 2 paths. Flavored gelatin for ease and strong flavor, unflavored for pure structure. Is there a third way?
There is. Recipe 49, called No Bake Lemon Cheesecake. This one sort of combines ideas. It uses lemon Jello, dissolved in boiling water, like recipe 48.
Okay, so flavor and structure again.
Yes, but then it introduces another stabilizer on top of that.
Really?
Instant topping mix. The recipe specifically calls for Dream Whip.
Dream Whip and Jell-O. Why both?
It seems like a belt and suspenders approach, doesn't it? Extra insurance.
Mm-hmm.
The lemon Jello provides the main set and that dominant lemon flavor, but the Dream Whip, when it's prepared and folded in with the cream cheese and vanilla, adds micro-aeration lightness and extra stability.
So it guarantees it's sliceable.
Guarantees it's sliceable, holds its shape well, maybe gives it a slightly fluffier texture than Jello alone. It's ensuring success without any oven time whatsoever. This little trio really shows you, even within no bake, the choice of how you bind it fundamentally changes the final texture and flavor intensity.
That whole analysis of binders, Jell-O versus unflavored gelatin versus Cool Whip, it leads us perfectly into what seems like a major theme in this compilation, the Amaretto continuum.
Ah, yes, Amaretto. If there's one flavor that signals complexity, richness, maybe even a bit of chefy ambition in these recipes, it's Amaretto.
It appears in, 12 different recipes?
12 distinct variations. That's a huge trend within this set of 50. It's clearly something the compiler was focused on.
So 12 different ways to use almond liqueur. They must vary quite a bit.
Oh, they range hugely, from just a simple splash added for flavor, all the way to recipes that are serious architectural challenges. And we absolutely have to start with the big one, the almond amaretto cheesecake, recipe 5.
Why start there?
Because this is the technical showcase. It demands the most complex heat management, the most precise baking cycle we've seen so far. It's intense.
And the difficulty starts right from the base, doesn't it? The crust isn't just crushed cookies.
Not at all. The crust is like an engineering project in itself. You're blending sugar, whole almonds, a bit of salt, flour in a food processor. Then you bind that sandy mixture with melted butter and a whole egg yolk, plus some almond essence.
An egg yolk in the crust. What?
That yolk is crucial. 2 reasons, really. First, obvious one, it adds richness, a deeper color. But second, and maybe more importantly, structurally, it makes the dough incredibly short and tender when baked for thin shortbread, but also really stable. It forms a solid base after its initial pre-bake.
How long does it pre-bake for?
8 minutes at 400 degrees F.
Hmm.
Just enough to set it. And this foundation needs to be strong because it has to support a truly massive filling.
And the filling is massive. The ingredients list is staggering. Five 8-ounce packs of cream cheese,
40 ounces.
5 large eggs plus 2 extra egg yolks, and nearly 2 cups of sugar, 1 2/3 cups. This thing is a behemoth.
It absolutely is. And the instructions for baking this behemoth are, well, pretty radical compared to the simple 350 for 40 minutes we saw earlier.
Yeah, talk us through that baking cycle. It's wild.
This is where you see real thermal engineering applied to dessert. The cake, in its springform pan, goes into an oven that's been preheated to a blistering 500 degrees Fahrenheit.
500 degrees for cheesecake. Won't that burn it or crack it instantly?
You'd think so, but it's only in there for 12 minutes. Just 12 minutes at that intense heat.
Okay, 12 minutes. Then what?
Then, you immediately drop the temperature drastically, all the way down to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, a really low heat. And it stays at 200 for a full hour.
Wow. High blast, then super low and slow. What's the logic? Why the 500-degree start?
That initial high heat serves a very specific purpose. It's trying to induce the Maillard reaction browning almost instantly on the exterior surface of the cheesecake.
Maillard reaction on cheesecake, doesn't that usually happen with proteins and sugars at high heat, like searing meat? And wouldn't that risk cracking?
It does risk cracking, which is exactly why the time is so incredibly short. 12 minutes is just enough. That 500-degree flash heat sets the proteins on the very outside rapidly. It forms a firm, maybe slightly caramelized exterior skin. Think of it like a protective shell.
A shell to keep moisture in.
Exactly. That quickly formed shell helps prevent the rich moisture inside that massive filling from escaping too quickly during the much longer, slower, low-temperature cooking phase that follows.
Ah, so the 200-degree hour is like a gentle, slow setting, like cooking a custard.
Precisely. It ensures that vast, dense interior cooks through evenly, gently, without curdling or becoming grainy. If you tried to bake that whole massive thing at a standard 350F, the outside would be overcooked and rubbery long before the center even thought about setting.
That makes sense. It explains how you get density without burning and maybe helps prevent cracking, too, if handled right.
If handled right, yes. And the handling continues after the baking. The cooling phase is just as critical. The instructions say to turn the oven off after the hour at 200, prop the door open slightly, and leave the cheesecake inside for another half an hour.
That classic technique. Avoid sudden temperature changes.
Right. No thermal shock. You let it cool down very gradually. It's all about managing the heat, both high and low, and then the absence of heat.
Okay, so recipe 5 is the technical pick. But the Amaretto series isn't just about heat, right? You mentioned variations in dairy, too.
Exactly. Beyond the heat management, the Amaretto recipes also show us how changing the dairy base alters the final mouthfeel. Consider Amaretto Cheesecake version 1, which is recipe 9.
What's different about that one?
It uses a blend of cheeses. 15 ounces of ricotta cheese paired with just 8 ounces of cream cheese. So almost twice as much ricotta as cream cheese.
And it bakes for 75 minutes at a more standard 325F. What functional difference does adding all that ricotta make compared to the pure cream cheese versions, like recipe 5?
Ricotta introduces porosity and lightness. It naturally has a higher moisture content than cream cheese, and its texture is slightly granular, not perfectly smooth.
So the cake is different.
The resulting cake is tannier, definitely less intensely rich than the all-cream cheese version.
Yeah.
And it has a slightly looser, more open crumb structure. If you want that lighter, more Italian-style cheesecake texture, using ricotta is essential.
Okay, interesting. Now, Amaretto version 2, which is recipe 10, that one seems to go back to pure cream cheese, 3 packages, so 24 ounces. But it introduces something else, 8 ounces of sour cream.
Right, back to cream cheese is the base, but adding sour cream.
And this recipe has maybe the most extreme instruction in the entire collection. It requires a 48-hour chilling period, 2 full days in the fridge. Why?
That's a great question. The sour cream provides a couple of things. It adds a beautiful, silky mouthfeel, makes it really smooth, and it adds essential acidity, which cuts the richness and deepens the overall flavor profile, complementing the Amaretto.
But why the 48 hours?
Because sour cream also significantly increases the moisture content of the batter. For that cake to achieve the perfect, dense, sliceable consistency, without relying heavily on extra eggs or flour as thickeners, it needs that very long, protracted cold setting period.
So the chilling is actually part of the structure building.
Absolutely. Those 48 hours allow the fats and liquids to fully stabilize to bond to basically firm up completely. It produces a creamier, smoother result than just an overnight chill might allow for a recipe with that much moisture. It's structural patience.
Fascinating. Delayed gratification for texture. Okay, we also see Amaretto playing with other big flavors, right? Like chocolate. Recipe 8, the Amaretto and Ghirardelli chocolate chip cheesecake.
Yes, this recipe is all about maximizing flavor saturation, hitting you with chocolate and amaretto from multiple angles. Ghirardelli chips, specifically, are used in two key places.
Where?
First, melted chocolate tips are mixed with butter and wafer crumbs for the crust itself, so you get a rich, chocolatey base. Second, more chips are folded into the cream cheese amaretto filling.
Chocolate inside and out. But the topping uses that high heat trick again, doesn't it? Like recipe 5.
It does, but in a very targeted way. It calls for a topping made of sour cream blended with more amaretto and sugar. This mixture is spread over the already baked and slightly cooled cheesecake.
And then back in the oven.
Back into a hot oven, 500 degrees F again, but just for 5 minutes. A very quick blast.
5 minutes at 500. What does that do to a sour cream topping?
It's transformative in those 5 minutes. It uses the same principle we saw in Recipe 5's initial bake, but applies it only to that thin top layer. The intense heat instantly caramelizes the sugar within the sour cream mixture.
Ah, so it creates a glaze.
Exactly, a glossy, slightly crackled, almost instant glaze. It seals in the moisture below, adds a complex, tangy sweet finish, and looks great, all without needing prolonged cooking that might affect the cheesecake underneath. It's a finishing flash technique.
Very clever. Okay, now, probably the most specialized one in this Amaretto group. Recipe 13, the Amaretto hazelnut macaroon cheesecake. This sounds like it goes beyond just flavor combos.
Oh, it's pure textural engineering. This isn't just adding nuts, it's constructing texture.
Yeah.
This is actually a non-baked gelatin set filling, similar to Recipe 76 we discussed.
Gelatin set. Okay, so where does the macaroon part come in?
It requires you to make two components separately. First, a standard hazelnut crust for the base. But then, you take about half a cup of a separate batter, a macaroon batter made from egg whites, sugar, and ground hazelnuts, and you bake that separately on, say, waxed paper into a thin disc.
You bake a hazelnut macaroon disc, and then...
Once that disc is baked and cooled, you break it up into small, bite-sized pieces.
Okay.
Those chewy macaroon pieces are then soaked in amaretto liqueur until they're saturated. Then those soaked pieces are gently folded into the main cream cheese filling, which is set with gelatin.
Wow. So you have these little chewy amaretto-soaked bombs suspended in the smooth, chilled cheesecake.
Exactly. The functional purpose here is multifaceted. First, soaking ensures the macaroon pieces themselves carry maximum amaretto flavor deep inside. Second, by baking the macaroons separately, you guarantee it keeps its defined, chewy texture. It doesn't just dissolve.
So it provides a distinct textural contrast.
A beautiful contrast. Chewy, nutty, liquor-soaked bits against the smooth, cool, creamy background of the gelatin set filling. It transforms a potentially simple chilled dessert into something really complex texturally. Quite sophisticated.
Okay, if Recipe 13 showed us how to engineer texture with special inclusions like those liquor-soaked macaroon bits, the next set of recipes really shifts focus. It shows how to engineer the fundamental density and mouthfeel by choosing radically different cheese bases.
Exactly. We're moving beyond the standard block of Philadelphia cream cheese now and exploring what happens when you introduce things like ricotta and cottage cheese as the primary dairy.
And this fundamentally changes the cake's profile, right?
Fundamentally alters the structural profile, yes.
Right.
We see this shift immediately in Recipe 26, the Brooklyn cheesecake. This sounds like a heavy-duty traditional style.
Brooklyn style usually means dense, tall, right?
Typically, yes. And this recipe achieves that using a true one-to-one blend by weight. 16 ounces of cream cheese and 16 ounces of ricotta cheese, equal parts.
Okay, ricotta, again, like in the Amaretto version, but balanced with cream cheese. And it's stabilized further.
Yes, it adds flour and cornstarch to the mix, along with sour cream.
What are the consequences of adding those starches, flour, cornstarch to that specific blend of cheeses? Why are they needed here?
Well, it seems the goal here is maximum density and height, but also minimizing the risk of the cake collapsing or weeping, which can happen with high moisture ricotta. The cornstarch is great at absorbing excess moisture. The flour helps strengthen the overall protein matrix, giving it more structure.
Makes sense.
But maybe the most defining instruction for this Brooklyn style, the real key to its success, is the cooling method specified.
Which is?
Leaving the cake inside the turned-off oven, door closed initially, until it cools completely to room temperature. No propping the door open this time, just a long, slow, gentle decline.
Why is that gentle cool down so essential, especially for these dense ricotta-heavy cakes?
It's all about minimizing stress on the structure. A dense cake with lots of moisture and stabilizers wants to contract as it cools. Cooling it too quickly creates uneven tension between the cooler outside and the warmer inside. That tension is what causes those classic deep surface cracks that often plague dense cheesecakes. Slow cooling prevents that.
Okay, so that's the classic New York method, essentially. Don't shock the structure. Now, let's jump to what sounds like the complete opposite end of the scale, maybe in terms of volume and style. The Tuscan cheesecake, recipe 50.
Yes, if Brooklyn is dense structure, Tuscan sounds like rustic volume. The ingredient list is huge.
Yeah.
It requires 3 pounds of ricotta cheese.
3 pounds and 8 whole eggs.
8 eggs. This is a champion of volume and inherently moisture because you have such a sheer quantity of high moisture ricotta plus all the liquid from 8 eggs and the flavorings Grand Marnier liqueur, the zest of 2 lemons and 2 oranges.
Okay, that's a lot of liquid.
It's a huge amount of liquid, so the instructions are extremely specific about the cooking environment it needs. It mandates baking the cake in a large roasting dish that's been filled halfway up with hot water, the classic bain-marie or water bath technique.
Right. For our listener, if they haven't used a bain-marie before, why is it absolutely non-negotiable for a massive high moisture cake like this Tuscan one?
Great question. When you have that much filling, 3 pounds of it, the outer edges of the cake will inevitably cook and set much, much faster than the center if you just put it in a dry oven. You'd get dry, rubbery edges and a potentially undercooked middle.
Okay.
The bain-marie solves that. The surrounding water bath creates a pocket of steamy, humid heat around the pan. Crucially, the temperature of that diffused heat cannot exceed the boiling point of water, 212 degrees F or 100 C.
So it moderates the heat.
It ensures the temperature gradient across that large cake is minimal. The heat transfer is gentle and even. It prevents the sides from overbaking, from curdling, from cracking, and results in a uniformly smooth, almost custard-like texture, even in the very center of that giant cake. It's absolutely essential for high-volume, high-moisture recipes like this.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, we also see the sources using distinct regional techniques, contrasting, for example, the Australian cheesecake, recipe 17, and the Austrian cheesecake, recipe 18. They sound similar, but are they different?
Very different in their approach and goal, despite the similar names. The Australian method, recipe 17, uses cream cheese, heavy cream, and a distinct flavor. Passion fruit.
Passion fruit, okay, tropical.
But the defining factor, structurally, is the technique used with the eggs. They're separated.
Separated eggs, how are they used?
The yolks are beaten into the cream cheese mixture as usual, but the egg whites are beaten separately until they form stiff peaks, and then they are carefully folded into the main batter at the end.
The folding in stiff egg whites, that's a serious commitment to adding air, right? Like making a souffle or a chiffon cake.
It absolutely is. That technique deliberately introduces millions of tiny air pockets into the batter. The goal isn't density here, it's lightness. It ensures the final product puffs up significantly during baking and results in a light, almost airy crumb structure. The passion fruit adds that unique tropical sharpness to cut through the richness.
Okay, so Australian equals light and airy via folded egg whites. What about the Austrian version, recipe 18?
The Austrian seems to prioritize a dense smoothness and more traditional European flavors. It starts with a different cheese base entirely. Cottage cheese or farmer's cheese, like quark.
Cottage cheese, isn't that lumpy?
It can be, which is why the very first preparation step is critical. The recipe insists you press the cottage cheese through a fine mesh strainer.
To smooth it out.
Exactly. That emphasis on refining the texture from the start ensures that any residual lumpiness or graininess inherent in the cottage cheese is removed. The goal is a smoother, more sophisticated, velvety finish.
And the other components.
It's paired with a classic shortbread crust, not graham crackers, and includes traditional additions like finely chopped golden raisins mixed into the filling. And notice the cooling method again.
Let me guess. Leave it in the turned-off oven.
You got it. Leave it inside the turned-off oven for 15 minutes before taking it out to cool completely. It's that recurring theme. Controlled, slow cooling equals structural stability, especially when you want that smooth, uncracked surface.
Okay, we've covered the classics, the regional twists. But this collection really pushes the boundaries, doesn't it? It includes recipes that are way out on the savory and even health-conscious extremes. We absolutely have to talk about recipe 31.
Ah, yes, the Cheddar Chili Cheesecake.
Cheddar Chili Cheesecake.
This recipe is the ultimate outlier. It fundamentally challenges the common definition of cheesecake as being a dessert. It's basically a savory terrine or a dense quiche without a top crust, but made in a springform pan using cheesecake
What
principles.
are the ingredients? It sounds wild.
They are pretty wild for a cheesecake. It uses a mix of cream cheese and cottage cheese as the base binder. But then, get this, 3/4 of a pound of shredded sharp cheddar cheese gets mixed in.
3/4 of a pound. Wow.
Plus, the flavor components are entirely savory. Chopped scallions, minced jalapeno peppers for heat, minced garlic, and then the really unusual part,
There's more.
thinly sliced ham. Layers of thinly sliced ham are actually placed inside the cheese mixture as it goes into the pan before it bakes for a long time, an hour and 25 minutes.
Ham layered in the cheesecake.
Yeah. It's a testament, I think, to the compiler's intent to capture the full structural capability of that springform pan and the setting power of cream cheese and other cheeses, even for completely savory applications. Structurally, it works because it relies on high-protein, high-fat ingredients, 3 types of cheese plus ham to set firm during that long bake. It functions more like a dense cheese loaf or pâté. It just shows the technology can be totally repurposed.
Amazing. Okay, and then in complete contrast to that rich, savory indulgence, we have the other extreme. Recipe 46, the diabetic cheesecake.
Right. This one highlights the necessary functional substitutions you have to make when dealing with significant dietary restrictions, specifically sugar avoidance.
So how does it work? What's replaced?
Sugar is completely replaced, obviously, with a sugar substitute. The recipe likely assumes saccharin or something similar from the era it was written. Critically, it also specifies using 4% fat cottage cheese, not full-fat cream cheese.
So reduced fat and no sugar, how does it get structure and flavor?
Well, without sugar providing bulk, taste, and some moisture retention, and without the richness and binding power of high-fat dairy, the recipe has to rely heavily on other things. It uses granulated, unflavored gelatin for structure, much like the creamy chilled cheesecake we discussed.
Gelatin again.
And for flavor, since there's no sugar sweetness, it leans hard on fresh acidity to provide brightness and interest. Fresh lime juice and lemon zest are key ingredients. It's really a lesson in how to create appealing texture and flavor under severe ingredient limitations. Gelatin for set, acid for pop.
Okay, we've established the wild range of structures, the different dairy choices, even savory options. Let's move into section 4 now and really analyze how this compilation approaches flavor integration using the traditional powerhouses: fruit, chocolate, and coffee.
Sounds good. When it comes to fruit, the recipes seem to show 2 main strategies for getting that flavor in there. Either you layer the fruit before baking it, or you add a glaze or topping after the cheesecake is baked and chilled.
Right. Which recipes use the first method, baking the fruit on top?
The apple cheesecake, recipe 15, and another one called autumn cheesecake, recipe 19, both use that pre-baking method, and they do it very consistently.
How does it work? What's the technique?
It's pretty straightforward. You prepare the cream cheese filling as usual and pour it into the crust. Then, separately, you take about 4 cups of thinly sliced peeled cored apples, a lot of apples.
4 cups. Okay.
Toss those apple slices with some sugar and cinnamon. Then you carefully spoon that apple mixture over the unbaked cream cheese filling. Finally, sprinkle some pecans on top of the apples.
And then bake the whole thing, apples and all.
Then bake the whole thing. This technique ensures the apples stay mostly on the surface. They cook down slightly during the cheesecake baking time, becoming soft and tender. And they release some moisture and their flavor directly into the top layer of the cheesecake as it sets. The pecans add a nice textural crunch and visual appeal. It's a classic, simple, layered fruit approach, baked-in topping.
Okay. What about the other method, glazing after chillin'?
The cranberry and white chocolate cheesecake, recipe 44, uses that post-baking glaze method. And this one adds extra complexity because it also features white chocolate in both the crust and the filling itself.
White chocolate cheesecake with cranberry. Sounds good. How is the glaze made? Is it just cranberry sauce?
It's a bit more meticulous than just opening a can. It requires a 2-part process for the glaze and decoration. First, you boil fresh or frozen cranberries with water and sugar until they pop.
Okay.
Then you strain that mixture. The resulting bright red liquid is thickened slightly with cornstarch, slurry style, to create the clear, bright glaze base. But here's the key. The actual cooked cranberry solids, the berries themselves, are reserved.
Reserved? For what?
After the cheesecake is baked, fully chilled, and the clear glaze is poured over the top, those reserved cooked cranberries are then arranged carefully, decoratively, maybe just around the outer edge of the finished cake.
Ah, so you get the sharp, clean cranberry flavor from the glaze cutting through the sweetness of the white chocolate, but you also get the visual appeal of the whole berries.
Exactly. And the clear to glaze ensures the smooth white chocolate filling beneath is still visible. It's a more refined presentation technique compared to just spooning cooked fruit on top. Got it. Okay, let's move to the dark side. Chocolate. The sources have multiple chocolate recipes, including Black Forest variations.
Yes. Recipes 24 and 25 are both Black Forest style. They rely on that classic combination. A chocolate crumb crust, often made with chocolate wafers, maybe some almond extract in the filling, and then cherry pie filling spooned over the finished chilled cake. Pretty standard approach.
But the mini version, Recipe 25, has an interesting twist in the batter itself
Right.
and the format.
Right. Recipe 25 is for mini Black Forest cheesecakes, so they're baked in muffin tins. This allows for much faster cooking times, maybe 20-25 minutes instead of an hour, and gives you perfect individual portions, which is great for parties or catering.
And the batter.
The batter itself incorporates Hershey's cocoa powder for the chocolate flavor and also includes sour cream in the batter, not just as a topping. That provides moisture and a slight tang, ensuring the little cakes are rich and moist, complementing the sweet cherry topping added later. Okay. But maybe the most structurally clever chocolate recipe is the turtle cheesecake, recipe 40. If you look closely at the instructions, the layering process seems backward.
It is entirely inverted from how you normally assemble a layered dessert, and it's done that way to solve a specific functional problem.
What's the problem?
Normally, if you try to put gooey caramel sauce and pecans directly onto a baked crust before adding the filling, what happens? The caramel can make the crust soggy, and the pecans might just float up or migrate around when you pour the heavy filling on top. It gets messy.
Right, so how does recipe 40 fix that?
It mandates that you do the turtle layer first. You melt down Kraft caramels with some evaporated milk to make a thick, smooth caramel sauce. You pour that directly onto the pre-baked crust and then sprinkle the pecans over the hot caramel.
Caramel and pecans go on the crust first, before the cheesecake filling?
Exactly. You put that pan in the fridge or freezer for a bit to let the caramel set slightly. The melted caramel acts like a high-density glue. As it chills and starts to solidify, it traps those pecans firmly in place right on the crust. It also forms a kind of moisture barrier between the eventual filling and the crust beneath.
Ah, clever. So the caramel layer locks everything down.
Locks it down. Then, once that base layer is set, you pour the actual cheesecake filling, which is a vanilla base with chocolate chips, folded in carefully on top of the set caramel pecan layer.
And bake as usual.
And bake as usual. This ensures those distinct turtle elements, the caramel and pecans, are completely embedded in the base, exactly where you want them, preventing them from floating or making the crust soggy. It's a really efficient reverse layering structure. Very smart.
That is clever. Okay, one more chocolate variation stands out as structurally unusual.
Yeah.
Recipe 41, the coconut meringue cheesecake. The filling seems standard, but the topping?
The topping is definitely the star here. The filling is a pretty basic cocoa-flavored cream cheese mixture. But once that's baked and cooled slightly, you make this unusual topping.
What's in it? Is it just meringue?
It starts like a meringue, egg whites and salt whisked until stiff peaks form, but then critically it incorporates a whole 7-ounce jar of marshmallow cream, or marshmallow fluff.
Marshmallow cream folded into meringue. Why?
The marshmallow cream acts as a stabilizer and adds sweetness and that characteristic sticky, fluffy texture. It makes the meringue much more robust and less likely to weep or collapse than a simple sugar meringue.
Okay, so you spread this marshmallow meringue on the baked cheesecake.
Spread it all over the top, right to the edges, and then the whole thing goes back into the oven, usually at a moderate temperature like 350 F, for about 15 minutes.
15 minutes. What does that final bake do to the topping?
That 15 minutes is just enough to set the egg whites in the meringue and lightly brown the top, giving it that toasted marshmallow look without significantly drying it out or overcooking the cheesecake underneath. It creates this stable, soft, light, marshmallowy cap that stays put. You're basically using the stabilizing power of the marshmallow cream to cheat the delicate nature of a traditional meringue topping. It's reliable.
Very interesting use of a convenience product. Okay, finally in this flavor section, let's look at coffee. The cappuccino varieties, recipes 29 and 30, how do they integrate that coffee flavor?
They demonstrate getting flavor in across multiple components of the final dish. Recipe 29, the cappuccino cheesecake pie, uses 2 hits of coffee flavor.
How so?
First, strong, dark brewed coffee and coffee-flavored liqueur, like Kahlua or Tia Maria, are mixed directly into the cream cheese filling itself. That provides the deep base coffee note within the structure.
Okay, coffee in the cake. What's the second hit?
It also calls for a separate, rich pecan sauce to be served with it. This sauce is made independently by simmering dark brown sugar, butter, heavy cream, and more coffee liqueur until it's thick and syrupy. That sauce is then poured over the individual slices of the chilled cheesecake when serving.
So coffee liqueur baked into the cake for depth, and then more in a rich sauce for aroma and intensity on top.
Exactly, layering the flavor delivery.
And the other one, recipe 30, the cappuccino chocolate cheesecake.
This one combines coffee and chocolate. It uses powdered cocoa and coffee liqueur in the batter itself for that mocha flavor profile. But its unique trick is in the finish, using another high-heat glazing technique, but subtly.
Another glaze. How does this one work?
After the cheesecake is fully baked, it calls for spreading a very thin final layer of plain sour cream over the hot surface. Just sour cream.
Just sour cream, then what?
Then the cake goes back into the oven, maybe at 350 degrees F, for just 1 minute, 60 seconds.
1 minute? That can't cook anything.
It's not meant to cook the cake further. It's just long enough and hot enough to set the proteins and maybe slightly caramelize the sugars in that very thin sour cream layer. It instantly creates a smooth, matte, almost invisible glaze on the surface.
Why do that? What's the benefit?
It does a couple of things. It gives a really professional, smooth, finished look to the top. It can help prevent superficial cracks from forming as the cake cools completely. And it adds just a tiny bit of extra tang right on top. It's a very quick, subtle finishing touch right before the final long chilling process begins. So having systematically gone through, 50 variations now, we can really start to synthesize the true breadth of what this culinary document represents. Cheesecake, as defined by this collection, is clearly a platform for almost infinite structural and flavor variation.
It really is. I mean, the range of liquids used alone is incredible. We saw everything from the standards like milk and vanilla
Right.
all the way through to really specific alcoholic additions. Amaretto, Kahlua, brandy, Grand Marnier, and even things like 7-Up soda in one recipe or strong dark coffee in others.
And the dairy choices were just as diverse, weren't they?
Yeah.
We moved from the classic full-fat cream cheese benchmark to exploring low-fat cream cheese, different percentages of cottage cheese, like 2% or 4%, the extensive use of ricotta, sour cream, heavy cream, evaporated milk in that caramel. It's clear the choice of dairy fundamentally dictates the resulting texture.
Absolutely. From that super dense, smooth block you get with pure high-fat cream cheese all the way to the much lighter, more porous, slightly grainy texture you get from a primarily ricotta-based bake.
Yet, despite all that profound variance in the filling, the liquids, the dairy, the flavors, the stabilizers, one element remained overwhelmingly consistent throughout almost the entire collection.
The foundation, the crust.
The crust. That structural uniformity is really striking when you look at all 50 recipes together. Across almost every single one, with very few exceptions, like the shortbread or the nut crust.
Yeah?
The base is graham cracker crumbs, or maybe vanilla wafer crumbs, sometimes chocolate-flavored crumbs,
Yeah.
mixed with melted butter or margarine, maybe a little sugar.
And the technique.
Always the same. Press it into the bottom, maybe slightly up the sides, of the springform pan, and bake it briefly, usually just 5 to 10 minutes, just to achieve a firm set before the filling goes in.
Why do you think there's such standardization there when the fillings are so wildly different?
It speaks volumes, I think. The compiler clearly understood that the crust needs to be a reliable, non-negotiable, stable platform. It needs to set quickly, be easy to make, and not require a long, complicated cook time itself.
So it allows all the focus, all the complexity to be placed on the filling.
Exactly. All the structural focus, all the delicate thermal requirements can be concentrated on the cheesecake filling itself, knowing the base is sorted.
And speaking of those thermal requirements, the real functional lesson embedded across all these recipes, maybe even more than the ingredients themselves, seems to be about temperature control and patience.
Absolutely. We saw that constant critical balancing act, applying heat carefully during baking, sometimes very high heat initially, sometimes very low heat for a long time, and then managing the subsequent cold just as carefully during the cooling and chilling phases.
That meticulous cooling process really does seem like the secret sauce, doesn't it? The key to preventing structural failure, like cracking.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
We saw those repeated mandates, especially for the really dense cakes or the high-volume ones, or the ones with unusual ingredients, think the Brooklyn, the Austrian, even that savory cheddar chili version.
Yeah. What was the mandate?
They specifically required leaving the cake inside the turned-off oven for an extended period, sometimes with the door closed, sometimes slightly ajar.
And the function of that is purely slow cooling.
Purely to ensure the heat dissipates slowly and evenly from that large mass. It prevents the outside from cooling and contracting much faster than the still warm interior. That differential contraction is what causes the stress that rips the surface open into cracks. Slow cooling equals less stress.
Okay. We also saw another small but seemingly important step mentioned in a few recipes, like the Aloha version and the apple one. The instruction to run a thin knife or spatula around the edge of the cake before it cools completely.
Yes, that's another crucial step for crack prevention.
Why is that specific manual step so important? What does loosening the edge achieve?
As the cheesecake cools, it naturally wants to shrink, to contract slightly, especially away from the sides of the pan. If the edges of the cake are firmly stuck, glued to the metal ring of the springform pan,
Yeah.
then as the center cools and tries to pull inwards, the stuck edges resist that pull. That creates immense tension across the surface, and where does it give way? Right down the middle, usually, guaranteeing a crack.
So loosening the edges allows the whole cake structure to contract uniformly.
Exactly. It allows the entire cake to shrink slightly as one cohesive unit as it cools without fighting against the pan. It preserves that flawless, smooth surface integrity. Such a simple step, but functionally vital.
And finally, the last piece of the temperature puzzle, the critical role of refrigeration. Just sticking it in the fridge isn't enough. The duration matters immensely. We saw requirements from a few hours to overnight, all the way up to that extreme 48-hour mandate for the Amaretto version 2.
That chilling period is absolutely not just about waiting for it to get cold enough to eat. It's an essential part of the chemical and physical setting process.
How so?
It allows the fats in the cream cheese and cream to fully solidify and crystallize in the cold. It allows any residual moisture to redistribute evenly throughout the structure. It allows the binding agents, whether they were eggs, starches, sour cream, or gelatin, to fully interlock and reach their maximum stabilization point.
So the longer the chill, the firmer and smoother the final texture.
Generally, yes. The
Okay.
smoother, denser, and more perfectly sliceable you want the final cheesecake to be, the longer and more patient the chilling time needs to be. The entire structure, the final quality, relies utterly on that meticulous management of temperature, both hot during baking and, just as importantly, cold during cooling and shelling.
Wow. This deep dive has really truly revealed that cheesecake, in this context, isn't just a recipe. It's a masterclass in dessert architecture, thermodynamics, and structural engineering.
It really is. It was quite a pleasure dissecting the precise methodologies hidden within these pages, from the simply sweet through the surprisingly savory and into those highly technical variations. A lot to learn.
Absolutely. Thank you for guiding us through that complex landscape. And as you, our listener, reflect on this incredible range of techniques and sometimes strange specialized ingredients we've discussed today, consider this final provocative thought. We observed recipes at the absolute structural and flavor extremes that savory cheddar chili cheesecake on one end and the restrictive diabetic cheesecake on the other. What fundamental practical limitations, whether they were dietary necessities or perhaps a culinary ambition to assimilate regional or cultural savory elements into a familiar form, what problems do you believe the person who compiled these 50 meticulous recipes was actively trying to solve by including those two specific, diametrically opposed examples in their otherwise largely dessert-focused collection?